So welcome and let's worship together. It is by grace that we are who we are.
People who are called by Jesus, yet fearful to follow. It is by God's grace that we can become followers.
People who are fearful yet gifted with courage beyond wonder. It is with God's grace that we become who we might be.
People who step out in faith, sharing the good news generously.
Welcome in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Good morning. This morning's prelude is by Edvard Grieg, considered the most important Norwegian composer during the nationalist Romantic period. He was born in 1843 and died in 1907. At the age of 15, he was enrolled in the Leipzig Conservatory, of which he afterwards spoke with a great distaste. In 1868, he published one of his most well-known large works, the Piano Concerto in A minor. Many of Grieg's best-known solo piano pieces are in the 10 opus numbers called lyric pieces, of which this morning's prelude is one of them. The best known of Grieg's dramatic music is the incidental music to Ibsen's Peer Gynt, which contains the well-known excerpt, Hall in the Hall of the Mountain King.
It is so simple to say, yet so difficult to live out. Do not be afraid. Yet, whatever fear burdens us, God will lift from our souls. Whatever foolishness we have uttered, God whispers mercy to us. Whatever wrong we have done, God's forgiveness is poured out upon us.
God of wonder and joy, we look in the mirror and do not see holiness reflected back. We long to be friends with others, but don't want to be intrusive in our friends' lives. We yearn to be more compassionate, yet it is often spite and malice we offer to someone else. We have trouble hearing the cries of loneliness coming from those around us. Forgive us, God, who longs to be enthroned in our hearts. You call us to different lives so we might make differences for all who hurt. You challenge us to take the risk by following Jesus Christ so we might become your children once again.
This is our good news. We are forgiven by God's grace. With God's grace, we are who we are meant to be. Forgiven, restored, called people. Thanks be to God. Amen. The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, the love of God, and the communion of the Holy Spirit be with you all, and also with you. In peace, let us pray to the Lord.
Lord, have mercy.
For the peace from above and for salvation, let us pray to the Lord.
Lord, have mercy.
For the peace of the whole world, for the well-being of the Church of God, and for the unity of all, let us pray to the Lord.
Lord, have mercy.
For this holy house, and for all who offer here their worship and praise, let us pray to the Lord.
Lord, have mercy.
Help, save, comfort, and defend us, gracious Lord.
Amen. Lord Jesus Christ, only Son of the Father, Lord God, Lamb of God, you who take away the sin of the world, have mercy on us. You are seated at the right hand of the Father. Receive our prayer, for you alone are the Holy One. You alone are the Lord. You alone are the Most High, Jesus Christ, with the Holy Spirit, in the glory of God our Father. Amen.
We pray. Most holy God, the earth is filled with your glory. Before you, angels and saints stand in awe. Enlarge our vision to see your power at work in the world. By your grace, make us heralds of your Son, Jesus Christ, our Savior and Lord. Amen.
Our psalm is Psalm 138. I will give thanks to you, O Lord, with my whole heart. Before the gods, I will sing your praise. I will bow down toward your holy temple and praise your name because of your steadfast love and faithfulness. For you have glorified your name and your word above all things. When I called, you answered me. You increased my strength within me.
Come on, you people, come and praise the Most High. Come on, you people, come and praise the Most High. Come on, you people, come and praise the Most High. Come now and worship the Lord.
All the rulers of the earth will praise you, O Lord, when they have heard the words of your mouth. They will sing of the ways of the Lord, that great is the glory of the Lord. The Lord is high, yet cares for the lowly, perceiving haughty from afar.
Come all you people, come and praise the Savior. Come all you people, come and praise the Savior. Come all you people, come and praise the Savior. Come now and worship the Lord.
Though I walk in the midst of trouble, you keep me safe. You stretch forth your hand against the fury of my enemies. Your right hand shall save me. You will make good your purpose for me. O Lord, your steadfast love endures forever. Do not abandon the works of your hands.
Come all you people, come and praise the Spirit. Come all you people, come and praise the Spirit. Come all you people, come and praise the Spirit. Come now and worship the Lord.
Our reading is from Isaiah 6, verses 1 to 8. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord sitting on a throne, high and lofty, and the hem of his robe filled the temple. Seraphs were in attendance above him. Each had 6 wings. With 2, they covered their faces. With 2, they covered their feet. And with 2, they flew. And one called to another and said, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. The pivots on the thresholds shook at the voices of those who called, and the house filled with smoke. And I said, Woe is me! I am lost, for I am a man of unclean lips, and I live among a people of unclean lips. Yet my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts. Then one of the seraphs flew to me, holding a live coal that had been taken from the altar with a pair of tongs. The seraph touched my mouth with it and said, now that this has touched your lips, your guilt has departed and your sin is blotted out. Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, whom shall I send, and who will go for us? And I said, here am I, send me. Words of God, word of life, thanks be to God.
Hallelujah, Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life. Hallelujah, hallelujah.
The Holy Gospel according to Luke. Glory to you, O Lord. Once, while Jesus was standing beside the lake of Gennesaret, and the crowd was pressing in on him to hear the word of God, he saw 2 boats there at the shore of the lake. The fishermen had gone out of them and were washing their nets. He got into one of the boats, the one belonging to Simon, and asked him to put out a little way from the shore. Then he sat down and taught the crowds from the boat. When he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, put out into the deep water and let down your nets for a catch. Simon answered, Master, we have worked all night long, but have caught nothing. Yet, if you say so, I'll let down the nets. When they had done this, they caught so many fish that their nets were beginning to break. So they signaled their partners in the other boat to come and help them. And they came and filled both boats so that they began to sink. But when Simon Peter saw it, he fell down at Jesus' knees, saying, go away from me, Lord, for I am a sinful man. For he and all who were with him were amazed at the catch of fish that they had taken. And so also were James and John, sons of Zebedee, who were partners with Simon. Then Jesus said to Simon, do not be afraid. From now on, you will be catching people. When they had brought their boats to shore, they left everything and followed him. The gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, O Christ.
Hallelujah, Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life. Hallelujah, hallelujah.
So Simon Peter had a rough day. Things didn't go like he had hoped. He had been out fishing all day and he had caught almost nothing. Not the best boost for his confidence. Of course, people told him this could happen to anyone. Bad luck, not his fault, but he wasn't sure about it. As a fisherman, he should know his waters. He should be able to read the signs and follow the fish. And he sees the pity of the people on the shore, their ways of looking away when their eyes meet, their squinted lips. They surely perceive him as a loser. And deep down, he feels like they're right. While cleaning up his nets, the crowd suddenly starts moving, chatting. Excitement is in the air. A man seems to be the center of the attraction. Without asking, he gets into Peter's boat. Why? Peter doesn't have time to rationalize what's happening. He jumps into the boat as well and puts it out a little away from the shore. And the man starts talking, preaching actually. And Peter realizes who his guest is. Jesus, the famous teacher and healer. What an honor. What a responsibility. And eventually, Jesus stops talking. Peter gets ready to take him ashore, but Jesus stops him. And he says, put out into the deep water and let down your nets for a catch. Now, Peter isn't sure he heard right. Does this guy want to ridicule him? Does he want to teach him a lesson maybe? And so respectfully, he replies, Master, we have worked all night long, but have caught nothing. But then he also says, well, yet, if you say so, I'll let down the nets. To himself, he's thinking, well, I warned you, this is not a great idea. I have fished the waters all day and all night and no fish. And if there were, someone else has most likely caught them by now. Or they're just too smart to be caught. Or they will have the wrong size. Or they will be the wrong kind. Also, nobody does that, going out again at night after a long day. Peter also knows to keep quiet, though. And afterwards, he'll tell the story in a told you so style. For now, he just tags along because Jesus is Jesus. And so they go out, and it seems like Jesus has this particular spot in mind, as if he knows the lake. Just a little more to the right, no, more to the left, 2 more strokes, that's it. And they pause, they lower the nets, they sit and wait in silence, listening to the night. And finally, Peter can't contain his curiosity anymore. He grabs onto one of the nets and he can't lift it an inch. And amazed, he looks at Jesus just to see that told you so smile. Right, let's get to work. This is worth a lot. Hopefully, the boat will be able to carry it all, but let's not take a risk. Ask others to help with the abundance of fish. Peter sees his partners jump into their boats, fill them up with fish until they almost sink. There's more than anyone could ever imagine, enough for everyone willing to get out that late. And suddenly, Peter's terrified. He knew that Jesus was a great teacher and healer. He honored him for that. But now he sees this man is more than that, not just because he just magically filled their nets, but because he seems to exactly know Peter's troubles, his dark thoughts, his self-doubts. He's not worthy of such attention and help. He doesn't have anything to offer to Jesus, well, except for his boat and his nets. At least he can say that he maintained them well over the years. He's good at property management. That's something, isn't it? He also is lucky to have great partners in his work, people who trust him enough to go out in the dark to help him bring in fish nobody thought he would ever catch. People who risk their boats and livelihoods to help him. He's good at building relationships with like-minded people. That's something, isn't it? But does that qualify him to be singled out by Jesus? There's so much he isn't. He isn't particularly brave or adventurous. He likes safety and routine, which doesn't involve night trips onto the lake. He sometimes envies his colleagues who seem to be so much more successful with so much less effort. And often he feels depressed and hopeless and tired, even though he isn't that old, and people keep telling him to get over it. Over what? So all Peter knows is that he is a sinful man and that he isn't worthy of Jesus's love and help. Also, is Jesus really trying to help him, or is he making a fool of him in front of everyone? Like, ooh, look, Peter didn't catch anything today, even though there's plenty of fish in that lake. So Peter falls down at Jesus's knees, saying, "Go away from me, Lord. I am a sinful man." He believes that Jesus is Lord. He always knew that, and it gives him the shivers. For he knows what God will do with the sinner. God will cast judgment on him, rightfully so. Just like fish, the unrighteous and unjust will be caught and pulled up by hooks and nets, according to the old prophets. And so Peter knows he's in great trouble, and he knows it, and he needs to find a way out of this before it's too late. God will focus on all the things he hasn't done in the past years, all the missed opportunities, all the fish not caught, the nets ripped, the new ideas not tried, the great fishing spots he ignored. it's great that Jesus came now to grant him some success, but this can't be good. And then Jesus says to Simon, do not be afraid. From now on, you will be catching people. Now, that, in Simon Peter's mind, surely must be a mistake to use him, the ordinary, not particularly good fisherman, to fish for something even harder to catch. God catches people to condemn them. Who would Peter be to condemn anyone? What's Jesus up to here? So Peter looks at Jesus, searching for a hint of irony or sarcasm, but Jesus just waits. He wants Peter to be a fisherman and fish people, no pun intended. When Jesus shows up, there is no eternal judgment. There's something much more consequential than that. It's not just forgiveness, it's recruitment. Jesus leans in and whispers, you were afraid of getting caught in one of God's nets? Well, I'll tell you what, from now on, you will be the one catching sinners, and not so they might be damned. Mind you, on the contrary, we're out to catch sinners so they might feel loved and worthy. Take heart. Amazed, Peter and his friends brought their boats to shore. They left everything and followed him. That means they left the great catch of fish behind. Now that they had finally found the perfect spot, they didn't even take time to cash the catch in. Instead, they leave it behind for everyone else who came back empty-handed that night, to share with their families and friends the good news of God's abundance. I mean, what could be more tangible than a fish in each hand for a hungry mouth? And so they left to go with Jesus, trusting that there will be a job for them to do, a meal to grab, a place to sleep at, something they cannot imagine in their wildest dreams, and yet they trust that they will be fine. That giving up a lot will give them so much more. Uncertainty and adventure and fulfilling encounters, spreading God's love, spreading the truth that God hasn't come to condemn, that God isn't done, that God won't settle for well-maintained empty boats and nets or great inner circle relationships. It's not like that isn't important. It's not like God won't use what's there. Got a boat, great. And now get into the deep waters and find the right spot and the right time, even if everyone else thinks you're crazy. And take with you whoever asks to get a ride. They might know things you don't. They might have the answer to your struggles. Don't give up. And got a net? Use it. Don't be afraid of too many people showing up, of too many taking advantage of your giveaway, your free cookies, your free grace. Because honestly, there's no cheap grace. There's just grace. Got fish? Give it away. Share it. Don't believe that you got the one and forever answer just because something worked out once. Tomorrow it will be a different time, a different spot, different people waiting to help you, waiting to get fed, waiting to be seen. There's only one continuity in the story. Jesus calling Peter and his friends to do what he tells them to do. Now, Peter's problem was never a lack of faith or trust in Jesus. His problem was his lack of faith in himself, in his gifts, his capacities, his worth, his lack of trust that God could use someone ordinary like him to accomplish God's purposes, his narrow-mindedness that prevented him from seeing what's possible. If one stops focusing on mere survival and begins envisioning Jesus's dream of fishing people, using what we have without believing that that's all we're capable of, Today, Joe and Chris will share a little bit about our journey with the Acts for Vitality program. And I do believe that in many ways we are like Peter. We are an ordinary church with ordinary people. We mess up, we sin. We might even feel like we're not doing a great job at being church in this world that changes so fast, we find it hard to identify the right spot and the right time to cast our nets. And so we often feel like giving up, like we're working in vain, like we're maintaining our property without catching the people we wish, without sharing the good news that we're indeed forgiven and free to live as the people God made us to be. But then Jesus comes along and Jesus tells us what to do. Things that sound unorthodox or maybe even insane. Things like giving up some things in order to get so much more. To leave everything behind that keeps us from catching people. To feed others with what we have without worrying about tomorrow. Trusting that God will lead us. Amen.
You have come down to the lake shore, seeking neither the wise nor the
Please join me, if you would, in confessing our faith through the words of the Apostles' Creed. I believe in God, the Father Almighty, creator of heaven and earth. I believe in Jesus Christ, God's only Son, our Lord, who was conceived by the Holy Spirit, born of the Virgin Mary, suffered under Pontius Pilate, was crucified, died, and was buried. He descended to the dead. On the third day, he arose again. He ascended into heaven. He is seated at the right hand of the Father, and he will come to judge the living and the dead. I believe in the Holy Spirit, the Holy Catholic Church, the communion of saints, the forgiveness of sins, the resurrection of the body, and the life everlasting. Amen. Thank you this morning. Would like to have a little discussion on the Act of Vitality, and like to introduce you to the members of the team on Act of Vitality. Those members consist of Pastor Tia, Jim Cepeda, president of our council, Chris Adams, a member of our church council, and myself. And just briefly, to give you a little idea, back in November, we had a meeting whereby we were joined with the Senate, Holy Redeemer, and Holy Trinity Church, and the four of us. We had a total of about 26 people. I will get into that discussion a little in a moment or so from now. But in the interim, I would like to pass this Temple Talk over to Chris Adams, and she can bring us up to date on some of the things that she's been involved with in stewardship. Chris, ball's yours.
Thanks, Joe. Well, you know that the Stewardship Committee has been doing the Kaleidoscope 365 study, and we've shared a lot of that with you in Temple Talks. And we finished up that with our coach and said, that was really worthwhile. And now what are we going to do about it? And then the Synod floated this Acts of Vitality, and we thought we recognized a lot of the important things in that cycle of blessings. It's, you know, a way to develop relationships, a way to develop new leadership, a way to use our time and our places. And we thought, well, this might be something we should really take a look at. And so we have, and we honestly, we weren't terribly impressed with the first meeting, but our three pastors had a real heart-to-heart with the Synod, and the Synod was actively listening. And so we've pursued some of the activities that have been suggested. The value mapping that we did was part of the Acts. We need to, well, we have pinned down what our congregation feels are really the most important values. Not that they're the only ones, but these are key values. And we need to look at them and look at how we're implementing them, and also kind of dream big about how could we really spin these out into something exciting for us. And we also need to offer these, our ideas, maybe first listen to the ideas of our sister churches and find out what kind of dreams they have for the future of their churches, and how we can all come together to have a little more, I don't know if I want to say a little more clout in our community, but to be a presence together and to really be the hands and feet of Jesus. And what as our ideas unfold over the next several months, what we're hoping that people will do is actively listen and also allow yourself, like Peter allowed himself a little margin of grace, where his brain said that, this isn't going to work, but his heart said, yeah, I know, but we'll go with it. And we need to allow ourselves to do that too, and dream big and set aside the skepticism and just really think about what could we do with our resources? What could we do if we pool our resources with our sister churches? And so ideas will come, will be floated to the surface. We'll talk about them. We'll see where it goes. And Joe, would you like to carry on and get into a little bit more specifics about what's coming up?
Thank you, Chris. A couple of things I would like to point out. Last Sunday, we had a temple talk regarding listening. I'm going to ask you today to sort of think about that last week and give thought to it today, because what I'm going to ask you to do is listen. Because next week we'll go into chat rooms whereby we can discuss what you're hearing today. And also we'll want to look to you to give us input and ideas. So let me start. And I want to start with a couple things. And let me also advise you that this temple talk is taking place only at Christ the King. We don't know what the other two churches have done or what their futures are to do. That being said, let me deal with a couple things that I see. I want to look at the past, the present, and the future. Past. I'm going to take you back a few years. 1950, my family moved here from Southern California into the Hayward, Fremont, Washington Township area. At that point in time, from where the cemetery is in Hayward up by Harding, along Mission Boulevard, from there down to the center of Milpitas, there were approximately 5,000 residents. This was all farming community, predominantly Protestant. About 98% of the population was Protestant. Homes were going up very rapidly. This was a growing community. And in each one of our little areas of Washington Township, like Centerville, Warm Springs, Niles, Union City, we all were together and growing very rapidly. In those rapid developments, we had our little enclaves, which developed individual churches. And the community was supporting it. In those times, I think our congregational size was about 200 to 250 communing parishioners each week. We were large and growing. The community grew. Community is still growing. We're now, in the whole area with Newark, the Tri-City area, maybe 450,000 people. That's a far cry from the old 5,000. In that development stage are under the auspices of the ELCA. We developed 4 churches here in the Fremont area. We had a lot of families in those churches. We had children. We had Sunday school. We had vacation Bible school. We had activities whereby the kids would go down to Mount Herman to camp. Very active family community. Back in the 50s, my folks bought a home here in Fremont for $4,000, brand new. When our children grew up, they went to school, they went to high school, college, they graduated. They got married. They wanted to move back to Fremont, but they found out the price of housing was something they couldn't afford. So they went to Pleasanton, Brentwood, Antioch. They moved out of the area because they couldn't afford to live in the Fremont area. So what has happened is our congregations have diminished in size. Now with the kids gone, of course, there's mom and dad and grandpa and grandma and, all of us here. And even though we're still here, as we get older, we sort of like to be around our kids. So, we might move out to where they are, which again leaves the community and diminishes the congregation. What is our opportunity for the future? Well, let's look at a little bit of the future. According to recent statistics, I think we're lucky to have 40% of the community that are Christian. We have a lot of people who have moved in and are of a different faith and a different religion and all. So consequently, our capability of drawing new people is somewhat limited. That's our present situation. What about our future? Let's look at our future. We're under the umbrella of the ELCA. There are 3, we started out with 4 churches with the ELCA here in Fremont and Newark. We are now down to 3 with activity. Under the umbrella of the ELCA, what do we want to do? And one of the parts of this discussion today is I want to ask you, as members of the congregation, to give us as a group who are representing the idea here, I want your input as to what you think we at Christ the King need to do to offer the other 2 congregations under the auspices and the umbrella of the ELCA. We as a committee are looking for your input. Now, if we look at becoming one under the umbrella of the ELCA, that means we're going to have to give up some things. And that's often hard. That's often very difficult to give up what we know. But from you, we would like to have your input as to how you can help us make ideas to pass on for the whole community here in Fremont and Newark of the ELCA. And in your comments, we will have breakout rooms next week where we can discuss it. But if some of you have some negative things or negative feelings that you feel about something like this and want to put your ideas forward, feel free to sit down this week and maybe write a note or something down and put it in the mailbox over at the church so that we can see that too. You may not want to identify yourself. That's fine. But let's all think in good terms and think ahead on this. As I say, next week, we're going to have the opportunity to discuss it. And there will be a breakout room for all of us. In putting these ideas together, we truly appreciate your input and we want it very badly. And the one thing in closing this short presentation down, the one thing I would like to offer, and it relates to today's sermon. Simon, who was a disciple, and each one of you in today's world, I think, are disciples. And Christ turned to the disciple Simon and said, put down your net. Maybe for us that's anxieties, but put down your net and follow me and be fishers of people. Maybe Jesus is asking that of us today and with our Newark and Tri-City brothers and sisters in Christ. Let's think about that. Thank you for the time, and amen. Please join me now in the prayers of intercession. The Spirit of the Lord is poured out upon us in abundance, so we are bold to pray for the church, the world, and all that God has made. Faithful God, cultivate ministries and communities of compassion that bear witness to your enduring presence among us. Equip your church to proclaim the good news that we have first received, the forgiveness and grace shown to us through Jesus Christ. Send us out as apostles, sharing the hope of your salvation with a waiting world. Holy are you, God of hosts. Heaven and earth are filled with your glory. Teach us to recognize you in the beauty of our natural world. Soften the hearts of rulers and governments that they perceive and tend to the needs of their people. Remove corrupt and impulse toward violence. Protect first responders and military personnel who risk their lives in service of others. Your steadfast love endures forever. Do not abandon those who look to you for hope and healing. Bless doctors, nurses, social workers, therapists, and all caregivers. Draw near to those who are scared, sick, or in pain. The disciples received help from partners as they brought in an abundant catch of fish. So strengthen this congregation's partnerships with community organizations and ministries. Multiply our shared effort and bring joy to our relationships. We give thanks for our ancestors and faiths who boldly answered your call. By their example, give us courage to live in faith and to proclaim your mercy until the day that you gather us into your glory. For whom else and what else would the people of Christ like to pray? If you have a prayer to offer, please unmute yourself and do so now. Since we have such great hope in your promise, O God, we lift these and all our prayers to you in confidence and faith. Through Jesus Christ, our Savior. Amen.
Amen.
God gives us what we need every day, and God asks us to give what we can to those in need around us. And thank you for your generosity to Christ the King. Sometimes we believe the gifts we offer do not matter, but when they are combined with all the other gifts of healing, of hope, of compassion, of your heart, they can become rivers of grace and justice flowing through the lives of everyone around us. Amen.
By the Lord of sea and sky, I have heard my people cry, all who dwell in dark and sin, my hand will save. I who made the stars of night, I will make their darkness bright. Who will bear my light to them? Whom shall I send? Here I am, Lord. Is it I, Lord? I have heard you calling in the night. I will go, Lord, if you lead me. I will hold your people in my heart. I, the Lord of snow and rain, I have borne my people's pain. I have wept for love of them, they turn away. I will break their hearts of stone, give them hearts for love alone. I will speak my word to them. Whom shall I send? Here I am, Lord. Is it I, Lord? I have heard you calling in the night. I will go, Lord, if you lead me. I will hold your people in my heart. I, the Lord of wind and flame, I will tend the poor and lame. I will set a feast for them, my hand will save. Finest bread I will provide, till their hearts be satisfied. I will give my life to them. Whom shall I send? Here I am, Lord. Is it I, Lord? I have heard you calling in the night. I will go, Lord, if you lead me. I will hold your people in my heart. I will hold your people in my heart.
Wherever and whoever you are, communion with God is coming to you. Prepare to welcome your guest. The Lord be with you.
and also with you.
Lift up your hearts.
We lift them to the Lord.
Let us give thanks to the Lord our God.
It is right to give our thanks and praise.
In that time when there was only you, you walked in the midst of chaos, shaping all that is good and beautiful. In that place where there was only your love, you stretched out your hands, scooping up the dirt off earth floors, shaping us in your image, breathing spirit into our lungs. In that silence where there was only your hope, you called us to be your people, God of glory and wonder. But the world sang its seduction, sin called us to follow its despair. Death blinded us to the life you offered, and so pouting and stamping our feet because you would not give us our way, we turned away, going down another path. You would not pay attention to our foolish tantrums, nor would you leave us in the grasp of death and sin, trusting that if we encountered the grace wrapped in your holiness, we would turn to you in joy. And so believing that you have reached out and called us to service with you and touched our lips with songs of hope, we join our voices with those who in every time and in every place sing of your ways forever.
Holy, holy, holy Lord God Almighty, heaven and earth are full of your glory. Hosanna, Hosanna, Hosanna in the highest. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest.
And now I invite you all to say the words of institution together with me so that they can be said and heard in every single one of our homes, hotel rooms, wherever you are right now. On the night in which he gave himself up for us, he took bread, gave thanks to you, broke the bread, gave it to his disciples, and said, "Take, eat. This is my body, which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me." When the supper was over, he took the cup, gave thanks to you, gave it to his disciples, and said, "Drink from this, all of you. This is my blood of the new covenant, poured out for you and for many for the forgiveness of sins. Do this as often as you drink it in remembrance of me." Great is the mystery of faith.
Christ has died, Christ is risen, Christ will come again. Amen, amen, amen.
Jesus called God his Father. So do we. Please pray in the language and the translation of your heart. Our Father,
Vater unser im Himmel, geheiligt
hallowed be
werde
your
dein
name.
Name.
Your kingdom
Dein
come,
Reich komme,
and
dein
your
Wille
will be done
geschehe,
on earth as
auf
in
Erden.
heaven.
today our
Tägliche
daily bread.
Brot gib
Forgive
uns
Forgive us our
heute.
sins as we forgive those who sin against
Vergib
us.
unsere
Forgive us
Schuldigen.
Save us in the time of trial, deliver us from
in the
evil.
time of trial and deliver us from evil.
Glory,
The kingdom, the
and
power,
forever.
and the glory are
Amen.
yours, now and forever. Amen.
Lamb of God, you take away the sin of the world. Have mercy on us. Lamb of God, you take away the sin of the world. Have mercy on us. Lamb of God, you take away the sin of the world. Grant us peace.
now, friends of Jesus, come to the table and see and taste that the Lord is good. This is the body of Christ given for you. The blood of Christ shed for you.
Will you come and follow me if I but call your name? Will you go where you don't know and never be the same? Will you let my love be shown? Will you let my name be known? Will you let my life be grown in you and you in me? Will you leave yourself behind if I but call your name? Will you care for cruel and kind and never be the same? Will you risk the hostile stare should your life attract or stare? Will you let me answer prayer in you and you in me? Will you love the you hide if I but call your name? Will you quell the fear inside and never be the same? Will you use the faith you found to reshape the world around through the sight and touch and sound in you and you in me?
We give thanks, gracious God, that you have once again fed us from your very self with body and blood of Christ. Send us to proclaim your promise to a world in need through the same Jesus Christ, our Savior. Amen.
And now may God be always with you to deliver you. May Christ Jesus put his gracious words in your mouth. And may the Holy Spirit bring you to completeness in faith, hope, and love. Amen.
In Christ called to witness, by grace we will preach the life-giving gospel. God's love we will teach. By grace may our living be proved to our praise. In costly compassion, reflecting Christ's ways. Unite us, anoint us, O Spirit of love, for you are within us, around us above. Equip us for service with gifts to bestow. In Christ is our calling, in Christ we may grow.
Now, if you would, please unmute yourself and join me in our sending. Filled with God's grace, we will go.
To share hope
those in
despair, for friends the lonely and afraid.
And the lonely and afraid. Filled with God's grace, we will follow Jesus.
To
offer
offer
justice
to
those
Forgotten by the
forgotten
world.
by the world.
Embrace those
Embrace
who
those
are lost.
grief and loss.
Filled with God's grace, we are empowered by the Spirit.
to
Bring
Bring
peace to all who walk in this
brokenness
around us.
in this room.
Walk in faith beside our sisters and
brothers.
brothers.
and brother.
Go in peace and serve the Lord.
Thanks
Thanks
be
Be to
to God.
God.